So as we talk about forgiveness in our relationships, I want to draw a bit of a hard line between two different ideas, two different processes that we often conflate in our imaginations. And those are forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness is really about our process as an individual of owning our pain, understanding that pain, processing it, and then when the time is right, choosing to set it down and leave it behind. And sometimes that takes time. I certainly don't want to rush you. There is a time to hold pain and to sit with it and to grieve it. But eventually there comes a time where we need to leave it behind. Because if we don't, if we hold on too long and we carry it with us too long, then what happens is that pain starts to create new injuries. It becomes toxic for us. And eventually, it replaces the pain that was actually done to us, and we start injuring ourselves more and more by just holding on to this bitterness and resentment. And so it's really important for us that we learn how to forgive, how to leave things behind, how to move forward. At the same time, reconciliation is a related but actually very different process. Because reconciliation takes both people. It is the restoration of the relationship. And to reconcile literally means to sit with again. And that requires both people to come to the table. It requires the person who has injured us to own their mistakes, to make amends, and then to choose to move forward in a different way, to make changes in their life before we can be reconciled properly. And that is not something you can control. Now, forgiveness you can control, and that's up to you, and you need to do that to be healthy. But reconciliation, you need to remember, is going to require the other person to participate. And when we forget that, a couple things can happen. One is we can think we've forgiven, but we're still holding on to pain, and we go into a moment of reconciliation, but we're really not ready to accept the person's apology and to believe that they've changed. Well, that's not healthy. You need to do your work first. The other thing that can happen is we have forgiven, and we think that that requires us to restore the relationship to what it had been before. And what will happen then is if the other person hasn't made changes, we will open ourselves up to being injured again. We will open ourselves up to toxic situations again. And what will happen is we will get hurt again. In fact, sometimes to forgive well means that you have to not reconcile. And that's really hard to stomach. It's really hard to imagine, because I think when we have forgiven, we want to assume that we're going to be able to be back in relationship with someone. And that's always our goal. That's always what we hope as followers of Christ, that all of our relationships would be one day reconciled and made whole. But until that time that the other person is ready to own it, to make changes, to move forward in new ways, sometimes we need to draw that hard line. So again, here's the bottom line. You always need to forgive, because that's what's good for you. And holding on to pain longer than you need to is not healthy. At the same time, sometimes you will need to create and maintain and enforce boundaries with people who do not respect you, or the ways that they've injured you, or the ways that they need to change. And again, that's hard, but when we conflate those two things together, we put ourselves in situations where, one, we're not going to be able to forgive well, and we're going to reconcile relationships that just aren't healthy.